Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something truly fascinating. Look, we all know we live in this hyper-connected world, right? We are just constantly bombarded by digital noise, notifications, endless debates. It's exhausting. But what if I told you the ultimate masterclass on finding genuine inner peace amid all that chaos was actually delivered thousands of years ago? Today, we are unpacking an ancient text known as the Udumbarika Sutta. And honestly, the psychological insights in this thing are going to fundamentally change how you view personal growth in our modern era. Okay, let's dive right into this. Our story actually kicks off not with quiet meditation, but with a massive ego. Just listen to this direct quote from Nigrodha, who was a really prominent ascetic of his time. This guy was incredibly arrogant. He boasted to a visitor that he could easily defeat the Buddha in a debate. He even went so far as to compare the Buddha's profound, isolated wisdom to a blind cow just wandering around in a circle, claiming that with just a single question, he'd crush the Buddha like an empty pot. Wow.
Section 1. The Noisy Ascetics.
Now, to really understand this intellectual showdown, we need to set the scene before the Buddha even shows up. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast right at the heart of this text. On one side, you have Nigrodha's camp. They claim to be intensely spiritual, but it is loud and completely chaotic. They're just endlessly gossiping about kings, thieves, armies, worldly affairs, the whole shebang. On the exact opposite side, you have the Buddha's environment, the deep forest, silent, isolated, completely peaceful. It is literally impossible not to see the parallel here to our modern digital distractions. Are we spending all our time in the chaotic noise of the timeline, or are we finding our own silent forest?
And just to put the sheer scale of this noise into perspective, the text explicitly mentions that Nigrodha was sitting there surrounded by a massive crowd of 3,000 followers. Imagine 3,000 people, all talking over each other, loudly debating trivial things while claiming to be holy. It was an echo chamber of absolute epic proportions.
Section 2. The Illusion of Holiness. So the Buddha finally arrives at the camp. He hears the boasting, he sees the chaos, but instead of getting defensive, he systematically starts peeling back the layers of what these ascetics mistakenly believe makes them holy. See, at the time, people actually equated extreme physical suffering with spiritual purity. These historical facts from the text are genuinely wild. Ascetics thought they were achieving greatness by doing things like eating cow dung, sleeping on beds of thorns, wearing clothes taken from corpses, and literally ripping out their own hair and beards. They truly thought this extreme outward physical suffering was the absolute peak of holiness. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the Buddha completely flips the script. He impartially lays out that these extreme physical practices, they often just mask deep psychological defilements. He tells Nigrodha that a person doing these things might actually just become obsessed with pride. They start actively seeking public praise, looking down on those who don't practice as hard, and hiding their own internal faults. Essentially, they're just performing for an audience and completely losing their mindfulness in the process. So if extreme outward displays of discipline, which the Buddha metaphorically calls the superficial bark of a tree, if they don't actually make you pure, it raises a pretty massive question. What does make practice truly pure? How do we strip away the performance and find a genuine substance?
Section 3. The 4 True Restraints.
This brings us to the first real layer of spiritual progress. Notice the absolute crucial distinction between action and mindset here. While the actions require you to not kill, steal, lie, or indulge in base sensual pleasures, the true genius is in the mindset. The Buddha emphasizes that true restraint isn't just about controlling your own hands and mouth. It's also about keeping your mind pure by not encouraging others to do these things, and crucially, not secretly rejoicing when others commit them. It is all about total internal consistency.
So, to summarize, true purity starts from within, not from outward extremes. But here is the kicker from the text. Even when Nigrodha admits this is a vastly superior way to live, the Buddha tells him this ethical foundation is still just the outer layer. It's merely the bark of the spiritual tree. We have to go deeper.
Section 4. Purifying the mind. Let's see how this builds, because now we transition into the deeper psychological work. Once your actions are restrained, you have to tackle the mind itself through meditation and clearing away internal obstacles. The Buddha identifies these 5 specific hindrances as the real internal enemies that drain our wisdom and energy: greed, ill will, sloth, restlessness, and doubt. Notice how incredibly psychological these are. You can't defeat these by sleeping on thorns. You can only defeat them by directly observing and purifying your own mind in silence. And what happens when you actually clear away those hindrances? The text explains you fill that space with the Brahma Viharas. This is a profound mental state where you radiate loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity in all directions to all beings without any limit. Replacing those toxic hindrances with these boundless positive emotions acts as the sapwood of the spiritual journey. We're getting much closer to the core now.
Section 5. Reaching the Heartwood. All right, now we reach the ultimate climax of the Buddhist teaching to Nigrodha. We've bypassed the fake outward extremes, moved right through the bark of ethical restraint, and past the sapwood of mental purification. You can see the exact progression we've been following, mapped out almost like peeling an onion. Or as the text describes it, stripping a tree to find the absolute most valuable timber. We move from bark to sapwood and finally to step 3, the heartwood. This is ultimate wisdom and liberation. The Buddhists systematically escalated the concept of purity step by step, literally leaving no room for argument.
The text describes this absolute heartwood as the attainment of the divine eye. It's this profound ability to see the vast interconnectedness of past lives and thoroughly understand the undeniable law of karma. It is the ultimate realization that our deepest, truest actions, not our boasting, not our public performance, and definitely not our loud debates, are what actually determine our destiny. Section 6, a lesson in humility.
Which brings our chronological narrative to its dramatic conclusion. Think about it. How does someone who started out boasting they could crush the Buddha like an empty pot react to having their entire worldview masterfully, logically, and systematically deconstructed? Well, he completely surrenders. Nigrodha, the guy with 3,000 loud followers, looks at the Buddha and offers this absolute confession. He says, "The fault overcame me, foolish, confused, and unskilled as I am." The contrast is just breathtaking. He goes from loud arrogance to quiet, humbled realization in the span of a single conversation. And how does the Buddha respond to this victory? So the crucial point is, he doesn't gloat. He doesn't try to take Nigrodha's followers. Instead, he says, "I do not speak to steal your disciples, but to help you abandon defilements." This brilliantly showcases the Buddha's profound compassion. He impartially deconstructed their beliefs, not to stroke his own ego, but purely to help another human being put an end to their internal suffering.
Which leaves us with a really critical takeaway for our own lives today. Look, the medium might have changed from forest camps to social media feeds, but the human condition, it remains exactly the same. We are still obsessed with the outward performance of purity and success. So as you close out of this explainer and return to your hyper-connected day, ask yourself this. In a world absolutely full of digital noise and performative acts, are you just cultivating bark or are you building heartwood? Thanks for watching and keep learning.